All right, so today we're going to be diving into this whole world of AI-powered coding.
Yeah, it's really changing everything.
It really is. Like, we're talking about tools like Cursor that are basically like rewriting the rules of software development. And honestly, I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible here.
Yeah, it's like we're stepping into this future where AI is like this partner in the creative process of programming.
Okay, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit for those who might not be familiar with all this. When we talk about a code editor, what are we actually talking about?
Well, you can kind of think of it like a word processor, but instead of like writing an essay or, a story, you're writing code, right? So it gives you that structure and tools to navigate your code and even helps you catch typos and things like that.
So it's like a super-powered autocorrect, but specifically for building software.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But I mean, it's more than just catching errors, right? Code editors give you this whole set of features that are like tailored for the specific quirks of different programming languages. But at its core, I think programming is really about, bringing ideas to life. It's about building something from nothing.
Totally. There's something really satisfying about writing a piece of code and then seeing it work, like you're having a direct impact. But now imagine AI coming in and like supercharging that entire creative process. That kind of brings us to GitHub Copilot. That felt like the first big splash in this whole AI-assisted coding wave.
Yeah, for a lot of programmers, Copilot was kind of like their first taste of what AI could actually do for them. Suddenly they've got this AI that's like suggesting code as their type, almost like it's reading their mind.
I've heard programmers talk about that it gets me feeling with Copilot, where it suggests the exact line of code they were about to write. It's kind of spooky, actually.
Yeah.
But, it's like AI magic, but there's obviously a lot of very complex science happening behind the scenes to make that happen.
Weren't there those scaling laws papers that came out like, I don't know, a couple years ago that basically predicted that as these AI models got bigger and were trained on more and more data, we'd see this like massive leap in what they could do?
Exactly. And you're seeing those predictions like really come true, not just in coding, but like across the board in AI, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For the team at Cursor, getting early access to GPT-4 was a real turning point. It's like those scaling laws just became real, They realized AI wasn't just about making coding a little faster. It could fundamentally change how we code.
So not just like incremental improvements, but a total paradigm shift. And that's where Cursor comes in. It's built on this idea that AI isn't just a helper. It's like this fundamental part of how we're going to code in the future. One of the things I find really interesting about Cursor is that they're not just like, using these like off-the-shelf AI models. They're building their own. Tell me a little bit about like the secret sauce. What makes Cursor tick?
Well, I mean, a big part of it is actually combining, the best of both worlds. So they've got these custom-trained AI models that are working hand in hand with like the big guys, right? The large language models that are really good at, tackling more complex reasoning tasks.
So it's kind of like they're building a custom engine, but specifically tuned for AI coding.
Yeah, exactly. And they've really focused on a few key areas. So take their Cursor tab feature, for instance. It's like autocomplete, but on steroids. And it uses this like specialized AI that's trained specifically to like predict what you're going to type next. And the amazing thing is it can actually outperform even like the most advanced general purpose AI models out there when it comes to, just suggesting code.
Really? So even better than like a GPT-4 at this point?
In this particular area. Yeah.
That's really impressive.
And then, you've got the apply feature, which sounds simple enough, but it's actually, there's a lot more to it than you might think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would have imagined it's as simple as just like copy and pasting the AI-generated code.
Yeah, you'd think so, but it's like you have to make sure that the AI code that's being generated actually blends seamlessly with the code that you've already written. And that means dealing with things like, line numbers and file structures and potentially just like huge amounts of code.
Right.
So Cursor uses these custom models that are specifically designed to understand those nuances, right? Like rather than just trying to like brute force a solution, it's more like, using a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer.
It's like this whole hidden world of AI models that are working together to help you write code. And speaking of which, one of the things that really struck me when I first used Cursor was just how fast it felt. I mean, we're talking about AI generating code in real time.
Yeah.
But it was like there's virtually no lag. Yeah. How do they make it feel so instantaneous?
Well, in coding, speed is everything. Even like a tiny delay can totally break your flow, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Cursor uses some really clever tricks to make sure the AI feels like it's like an extension of your thoughts and not this like bottleneck.
So, like, what kind of tricks are we talking about here?
So one of the things I do is something called speculative edits. So imagine you're writing a function, let's say, to process some data, right? The AI can actually, by looking at the type of data that you're inputting, it can start to kind of like pre-fill the basic structure of that function. It's almost like it's anticipating your next move in a chess game or something.
Wow, that's wild. Like predictive typing, but on another level.
And then they also use this technique called cache warming, which is basically as you're typing, it's kind of like preloading these likely code snippets. So when you actually hit enter, the AI already has like a head start on, generating those suggestions.
It's incredible how they've optimized every single step of the process to like eliminate like any wasted time. It makes the whole coding experience so much more fluid. Now, I do have to ask, with all these large language models out there, is there like a clear winner for coding? Is there like a reigning champion of the AI coding world?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Everybody wants to know, but the answer, unfortunately, is not that simple.
Figures.
There's no one model that's the best at everything. It really depends on what you're trying to do.
So different models have different strengths, just like human programmers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So one model that's getting a lot of buzz right now is called Sonnet. And it seems to have this knack for understanding the programmer's intent, even in scenarios that aren't, super well defined. But then you've got models like O1 that are really powerful when it comes to, those really complex problems you might find in a coding interview.
So it's about choosing the right tool for the job, or I guess in this case, the right AI model for the coding task at hand. But like, how do you even begin to evaluate these models? Like, how do you know if an AI is good at coding? Because it's not as simple as, just like those coding challenges you see online where it's like a very contained problem.
Yeah, the real world is messy, right?
Exactly.
Like real world coding is messy and unpredictable, and it often involves a lot more context than those, neatly packaged problems that you see in coding challenges. It's not just about solving a problem in isolation. It's about understanding the nuances of a specific project of a code base.
So it's like the AI needs to be able to read between the lines of code almost, just like a human programmer would.
Yeah.
So how do you even measure that? How do you know if an AI is good at real-world coding?
It's tough. I mean, it's not just about those like quantitative metrics anymore, right? You have to rely on more qualitative feedback, things like some people call them human vibe checks.
Human vibe checks. I like that.
Yeah, you need experienced programmers to actually use these tools, get a feel for them, and see if the AI is like truly understanding what they're trying to accomplish.
So it's not just about how well the AI performs in a vacuum. It's about how well it collaborates with a human programmer in like an actual coding environment.
Exactly.
We've been talking about these AI models that can generate code, but I imagine like understanding the context of that code is crucial. Just like a human programmer needs to understand the bigger picture, like the surrounding code to write something meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. Context it's everything in coding, right? And this is where things get really, really interesting and challenging. Like you said, the AI needs to understand the entire code base, like the grand scheme of things, to really be helpful.
So how does Cursor handle that? Because we're talking about potentially massive amounts of code.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. And Cursor tackles it with these like really sophisticated code indexing and retrieval systems. So these systems basically allow the AI to like read your code base, understand the relationship between, different parts of the code, and then like pull in the relevant information when it's, generating suggestions. It's like giving the AI this deep understanding of the entire project's history and structure.
Wow, that sounds incredibly complex.
Oh, it is. And then scaling these systems to handle like the massive code bases of these like huge companies with potentially thousands of developers working on them simultaneously, that's a whole other beast.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, imagine trying to keep track of all those changes, all those different versions of the code, and making sure the AI has an accurate and up-to-date understanding of it all.
It's like a logistical nightmare.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a problem they're like actively working on, but there's some really promising research happening right now in this area called post-training. And essentially, it's like you can fine-tune an AI model on this massive data set of code from a specific project.
So it's like giving the AI like a crash course in a specific code base that it's going to be working on.
Exactly. Think about it like this. Like, imagine training an AI on the code base of like, a popular social media platform.
Right.
It could then help developers, write new features much faster because it like already understands the intricacies and the nuances of that particular platform.
That's really interesting. It's like giving the AI this like insider knowledge of the code.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it opens up some like amazing possibilities. But while we're on the topic of exciting possibilities, let's talk about another kind of frontier in AI coding that feels very futuristic. AI agents.
Okay. AI agents. Now we're going full sci-fi.
Yeah, it might sound like it, but it's closer than you think. So an AI agent is basically a program that can like act autonomously on your behalf, right? So in the context of coding, imagine like an agent that could automatically find and fix bugs in your code. So you don't have to do that tedious, frustrating process.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Where do I sign up?
Right. So one of the developers at Cursor, Arvid, he has this vision for exactly that, right? Where it's an agent that operates in what he calls a shadow workspace. So basically like a hidden instance of Cursor where the AI can like experiment and tinker with the code without actually affecting your main code base.
So it's like having the AI work in this like sandboxed environment, right?
Yeah.
Trying out different solutions and fixes without the risk of like breaking anything.
Exactly. So it can get feedback from like those code checking tools that we talked about earlier. It can even like run the code all without you having to do anything.
That's wild. It's like having this like tireless assistant that's just like working behind the scenes to just like perfect your code.
That's like, yeah, pair programming, but with an AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I imagine there's some pretty significant challenges in actually making these agents useful.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a big one is just like the iterative nature of coding itself, right? Like you often don't know exactly what you want until you see like a first draft and then you tweak it and you refine it and so on, right? So that makes it really hard to like give an AI agent a clear set of instructions to follow autonomously.
Right. So the AI needs to be able to adapt to like your changing needs and preferences as you're going, not just like blindly follow some, predetermined plan.
Exactly. And then on top of that, there's just the issue of verification, right? Like how do you make sure that the agent hasn't like introduced new bugs or made changes that you don't like? Like you need some really, really robust ways to verify the agent's work and make sure that it's, always aligned with your vision.
It's like having an apprentice programmer. You want to give them like the freedom to experiment and learn.
Yeah.
But you also need to make sure they're not like accidentally breaking the whole project.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. So yeah, I think AI agents have like immense promise, but there are definitely hurdles to overcome before they become like a regular part of our coding workflow.
Right. It sounds like this whole field is still very much in its early stages, but with so much potential like waiting to be unlocked. But it's clear that like the goal here is not to replace human programmers. It's to empower them, right?
Absolutely. I think Cursor's philosophy, and I think this is true for a lot of people in the AI coding space, is that it's all about like augmenting human capabilities, not replacing them, right?
Yeah.
It's about giving programmers superpowers. It's not about making them obsolete.
So it's all about this idea of like this human AI collaboration where we're, leveraging the strengths of both to create something that's greater than either one could achieve on their own.
Exactly. And, in this future of programming, I think, speed, control, and agency are going to be paramount. Like Cursor envisions this world where programmers are always in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah.
Able to like iterate quickly, make those crucial decisions, and ultimately like shape the software that they're building.
So it's really about empowering programmers and giving them these new tools and these new ways of working, not replacing them, which I think is really important to emphasize.
Yeah, for sure. I think, ultimately these tools, they have the potential to make programming more accessible, more fun, and ultimately like more powerful, right?
Absolutely. That's what's so exciting about this whole field. Like this idea that anyone, no matter what their background is, could potentially build their own app or their own digital tools or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like this. It's like democratizing the ability to create software, which is a pretty powerful idea when you think about it.
It really is.
It is. And, while we've been focusing on Cursor, obviously, there's this whole like ecosystem of AI-powered coding tools out there.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a really rapidly growing field right now.
It is. It's moving so fast. Like every day there's something new.
So for those who are listening who maybe, they're hearing all this and they're like, okay, this is really cool, but I don't even know where to begin. Like, where would you recommend people start if they want to kind of like dip their toes into this world of AI coding?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I mean, obviously Cursor is a fantastic starting point, right?
Yeah,
It's free. It's built on VS Code, which is like a really already widely used editor. It's got a very intuitive interface.
it's very approachable.
Yeah. And then, of course, you can't go wrong with GitHub Copilot, especially if you're already using, GitHub for your projects.
It's funny. I feel like GitHub Copilot was like, you're talking about like how it felt like this big splash. It's like, it almost feels like now we're like a year or two into this. It feels like almost like the grandpa
Yeah,
of AI coding tools.
crazy how fast it's moving.
It's moving so fast.
But, those are great for, like, getting your hands dirty and actually using the tools, right? But I think for people who want to go, like, a level deeper and really understand the underlying concepts of, like, how these tools work, there's tons of amazing online resources available. Like, a lot of universities now offer, like, free courses on machine learning and AI and stuff.
It's true, yeah. And there's some really good like YouTube channels and things like that too.
Oh, yeah. Tons of great YouTube channels, podcasts like this one. And the online community, I think, is one of the best parts about this. Like, people are so open and willing to share their knowledge and help each other out.
Yeah, it's a very welcoming community, which is nice.
It is. It is.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I encourage anyone who is listening, if this is something you're interested in, like jump in, experiment. Don't be afraid to, break things. Learn as you go because that's how you get better at anything, right?
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into this world of AI and the future of programming. I feel like we talked about the potential of these tools. We talked about like the challenges of actually integrating them into our workflows and some of the really like exciting possibilities that are still to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an exciting time to be following this space because it really does feel like it's changing so rapidly. And, who knows what the next few years are going to bring.
Exactly. We're just at the beginning, I think.
Totally.
Well, on that note, we should
Yeah.
probably wrap things up. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this awesome insight into this really fascinating world.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep coding.